Welcome to About the Album.
How you doing? I'm Brian Turner here. We got to my right, we've got Asher Rives. Today we're going to be reviewing Led Zeppelin 3. This is our premiere issue of About the Album. And
Called Led Zeppelin and the Shrieking Monkeys.
There you go. And we're going to tell you why it's called the Shrieking Monkeys before long. But first, let's just talk about the album cover. Now, I've had this album for a long time. I went through my record collection and just kind of went through some records. I said, let's pick out one of these, Asher. And we decided that Led Zeppelin 3 is a very interesting story, and we're going to start with that one. Not only is it an interesting story, but the album cover is really cool. And it's got the very artsy front cover. You can open it up. It's got most of your little pictures are flying machines, like butterflies, like Zeppelins.
Yeah.
And it's got a turning wheel. Tell me something about the turning wheel.
So it's called a Volvel turning wheel, and essentially what it is it's a picture inside of a picture, but it's got holes to where you can kind of see, like if I bring it up, you can see whenever I do it right here, it spins like that. And then you can, if you line it up correctly, it's got a couple different options that look good together.
Yeah.
But this was designed by a guy named Zeppelin, which Jimmy Page met at Kingston College of Art. Mm-hmm. And he was like a very modern contemporary artist.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Page wanted a really weird album cover apparently, so he asked him.
Yeah, and it was my understanding that the album was at the time was a little bit more money because of the complexity of the what's it called again? The wheel is called
the Volvel turning wheel.
Yeah. And of course it opens up double like that. Yeah. See, and I have seen pictures. They actually pull that wheel out, and it's a piece of art itself. We're not gonna do that because I don't want to mess up my album. And of course it's got a picture of the band on the back. Yeah. Right.
Just to prove it, we do have the record in here.
There you go.
It's got side A and side B.
Original vinyl. I think I've had that since 1979 or something like that. So, why did we pick Led Zeppelin 3 and not Led Zeppelin 1, 2, and 4? Have any idea?
Because it's acoustic and controversial.
Yeah, exactly. We wanted to get a band that was popular. Of course, there are not many bands more popular than Led Zeppelin, but we wanted something unique about the album. Okay. Let's talk about before we talk about Led Zeppelin 3, well, Led Zeppelin had two, Led Zeppelin 1 and Led Zeppelin 2 back in the late 60s, and they basically dethroned the Beatles. They had a very successful tour in the United States, and the albums was number one on the charts, both Led Zeppelin 1 and Led Zeppelin 2.
And Led Zeppelin 3.
Yeah, but they were touring extensively, and basically they dethroned the Beatles. Basically owned the '60s. We all know that, right? Well, for the first time they were dethroned, and they become the bestseller over the Beatles, and so they pretty much were, I guess you could say, sitting on top of the world, and with their albums being so. But they were working real hard, and they had to take a break, didn't they?
Yeah.
And so taking a break was before Led Zeppelin 3. So what can you tell me about that?
They went to, I don't know how to say it, Broniar.
Broniar. And what was that?
That was a cottage somewhere in Britain. I don't know the exact location, but it was where Robert Plant would go spend summers with his family as a child. But he didn't, there's no running water and no electricity, and that's why a lot of the songs from this album are acoustic, is because they did their arrangements with their acoustic guitar there because they couldn't plug in an amp there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was like you said, it was out in the middle of nowhere. Just Plant and Page went there, and their dog, and there was no running water, no electricity. No internet, right?
Yeah. Well, there wasn't internet back then.
Exactly. Nobody even thought about it back then. But so like you said, it was more of an acoustic album, and they came out with the acoustic album, and how was it received? I say it had some electric too, but it was a mixture. Yeah. But how was it received?
It depends on who you ask, honestly. Because there were a lot of people who really liked it, said it was a turn in the right direction. Mm-hmm. A lot of people were like, what happened to Led Zeppelin 1 and 2? They thought they would try it. That's kind of what they were expecting was, Led Zeppelin 1 and 2 were both a formula that was very successful. But they didn't do that this time.
Yeah, they were really influenced by you come to find out they were really influenced by folk music, and
Yeah.
because they started having a lot of acoustic music with open tunings and such, and people were kind of surprised. But in my mind, they shouldn't have been too surprised because there was foreshadowings of that.
Yeah.
For example, Led Zeppelin 1 had Black Mountain Rag, which was Dagad tuning. It actually had Indian tablas on it. So they were already getting into the music from India and all the folk music from England, and they were really admirers of acoustic players and such, and so it wasn't new to Page.
No.
Yeah. All right. So, but like you said, the reception, like the Rolling Stone magazine, which is at the time was the most prestigious of the magazines, kind of raked them over the coals.
Yeah, you were telling me he went back and read it and said the only song they really liked on there was "Immigrant Song," which is a very well-known song, especially as of late, as it's used in a lot of superhero movies lately.
Yeah. And it was in the tradition of 1 and 2. It was a hard rock and driving
An octave
song.
riff.
Yeah, yes, and it was so, but anyway, so that the way it's different is basically it's got a lot of acoustic music, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the description, I was researching, I found a lot of people were saying it as this description. It's a Led Zeppelin 3 marked a change in focus for the band from late 1960s hard rock to a psychedelic folk and acoustic sound. These styles have been present to a lesser degree on the band's first 2 releases, such as Babe, I'm Going to Leave You and Ramble On, from the first and second albums, respectively.
Right.
So, foreshadowing, but...
Yeah.
So do you want to get into the songs now?
Yeah, let's see. So the first song was Immigrant. So, we're not actually going to play the songs here. We don't want to get into any copyright issues or anything.
Yeah.
But the first song on the album was Immigrant Song. And so what can you tell me about that? We touched on it a little bit.
So Robert Plant wrote it while Led Zeppelin was touring, and they were in Iceland, and he was staying in this place where you could see the water, and it made him think of Norse myths and Vikings. And so it was written about the Viking invasion of Britain or England.
Yeah.
An Icelandic Viking.
Yeah, and you could tell Robert Plant did his homework because he sang about some of the Norse mythology, and used some of the terminology for the particular legends. So I thought the lyrics of that song was clever even more so.
Yeah.
Some of the songs,
if you could tell what he's saying.
Yeah, he was and he did his homework on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so and it was smart. They said, we're going to start off giving what they're used to getting.
Yeah.
A hard driving rocking song.
And another thing that's interesting about that is Led Zeppelin had a very strict no singles policy up to that time, but the record company was like, please release a single, so they chose that one, and with the B-side of that record was Hey Hey What Can I Do?
Yeah, which wasn't on the album.
No.
Yeah. Okay, can we move on to the next song?
Yeah.
Next song is Friends. What can you say about Friends?
So it was in an open C6 tuning, but Page did not know it was in an open C6 tuning. He was just kind of messing with his guitar. And if you listen to it, it's got a lot of Indian vibes to it, because most people know the Beatles are famous for going to India, and George Harrison getting exposed to all the music there, and a lot of them getting exposed to it. But Led Zeppelin had a lot of experience with that music too, and you can hear it whenever you're listening to it. It's kind of got an Indian vibe, it kind of reminds me of kind of Arabic, of the Aladdin soundtrack a little bit.
Yeah, it's got that Eastern sound, and you have to give John Paul Jones credit, right?
Yeah, he arranged the strings for it.
Right. Yeah, and he plays keyboards. People talk a lot about Page and Plant, but John Paul Jones played the keyboards, played the Hammond organ, played the bass, played the mandolin.
Yeah.
And he was not. It wasn't like they just found him on the corner on a gig. He was an important musician before they got him.
I wonder if he was older than the rest of them.
I don't know. I have to do my homework. I didn't do my homework on that one.
Yeah.
But that'd be about the same age, I think.
Yeah.
But let me. You got anything else to say about Friends, in particular? A little interesting story about. I thought the most interesting story I found about this song was that it being an acoustic song using open tuning, and a lot of people accused them of kind of ripping off Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Young because they were getting popular at that time, and so the story goes of all that he kind of maybe ripped them off. And when I read that, I thought, well, that's absurd because it never even occurred to me that Led Zeppelin sounded anything like Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Young.
Very different.
Yeah.
Especially as Led Zeppelin wanted to evidence what the people bring out because it's not the formula.
Right. But I got to do more research. I found out while they was doing tour in the States, they actually did go see them. And then they mentioned that the song "Carry On" by Crosby, Stills, and Nash sounds like Friends, and I went and listened to it. It does in fact sound very similar. So I don't think Page consciously tried to rip them off.
And we'll try and link both the songs in the description. We'll try and link the whole album down in the description, but you can listen to it and see that.
Right. "Carry On" by Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and Friends. Now, I know that had to cut Page to the quick whenever people were saying that. Matter of fact, after those bad reviews, he didn't do any more interviews for 18 months. He was mad, you know. So I thought that was a pretty interesting story. Okay, that's Friends. Anything else about that?
No.
All right. The third song is
Celebration Day.
Celebration Day.
Well,
Celebration Day it's a very rootsy blues. It has a kind of an American influence. It kind of reminds me of Howlin' Wolf, The Killing Floor. It's got that dominant seventh sounds to it, but it's an electric guitar. But although it sounds very American blues to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So next song.
Yeah. Since I've been learning.
And this is the last song on the A side.
You're right. Back in those days, you had two different sides.
Yeah.
Do you have any comments about?
Well, that one was very interesting because it was like very bluesy, but it mixed it with some folky acoustic too, because you can kind of hear in the background kind of a droning acoustic.
Yeah.
But I thought that was interesting because it takes two very different styles of music and makes it sound good together. And it's very like Stevie Ray Vaughan. Well, that was before Stevie Ray Vaughan, but Jimi Hendrix, just kind of the dun dun dun, like the slow blues.
Yeah, he had a beautiful slow blues in mind. I remember I saw them do it live in like '72, and then to me that song just got me excited, wanting to play guitar. To me it just sounded so soulful because he's kind of playing just real soft, and when he kicks into that Les Paul live, it's just starts screaming.
Yeah. How many times did you see Led Zeppelin?
3. Saw him 3 times. I saw him. I guess that might have been the first one right after Led Zeppelin 3, and then after Led Zeppelin 4. So, and maybe 2 times. I know I saw him twice, maybe 3. 2 I remember. Anyway, so that's it. Okay. So let's go on to the next side of the album.
Do you want to say the story now about the Shrieking Monkeys?
Yeah. So where on earth did we get the Shrieking? Or is that us? First of all, let's make a clarification. I'm not calling them the Shrieking Monkeys.
No.
Tell the story about that.
So this is from, most of the stuff that we found is from either Record Collector Magazine, their website, on the story of Led Zeppelin 3. If you just search up like Led Zeppelin 3 stories, that is very in-depth, tells you a lot about it. But most of the sources were from Record Collector Magazine and the Wikipedia page on this. But the story is, I'm just going to read it off. They were confronted by one Eva von Zeppelin, claiming to be a direct descendant of the designer of one of the first airships, Count von Zeppelin. She threatened to sue the band if they performed as Led Zeppelin, making the infamous statement, "They may be world famous, but a group of shrieking monkeys are not going to use a privileged family name without permission." For their KB Hall in Copenhagen show, they used an entirely different name, but the next night they still used Led Zeppelin. Little was heard of Eva von Zeppelin's claim again.
That was the funniest story I read of the whole thing.
Shrinking Monkeys. I'm just going to refer to Led Zeppelin as the Shrinking.
Well, and like you said, we need to form us being called the Shrieking Monkeys. That's beautiful. That's a great name for it. All right. Oh, okay.
We play a little bit out of tune.
Yeah.
And Robert Plant sounds like a Shrieking Monkey anyway. So.
All right. So where are we at from? What's the next one?
That would be. Got our notes here. Out on the Tiles.
Out on the Tiles. Now, didn't you say that was the one that was written by?
It was written by John Bonham. Yeah. And he did it as a concept. He had a concept where the riff would continue throughout the song, the guitar riff. Mm-hmm. And if you listen, you can hear the riff going completely throughout the song. Yeah. But that was his contribution to the album. And one thing I thought was interesting, that was the one song on the album where you can tell what Robert Plant is really saying, like, the words are a lot more clear and less like a shrieking monkey. But that's what I noticed about that song.
And while you're on the subject, John Bonham, okay. You know, they just got through doing the Led Zeppelin 1 and 2, and he was starting to get the reputation as maybe the world's greatest drummer. You know, he really, you know, people loved him. They really thought he was like the greatest drummer alive. So they had the 2 albums, and all of a sudden Page and Plant comes up and say, okay, we're going to do an album that's going to be mostly acoustic music now. Yeah. When you have the world's greatest drummer. Now I thought it shows a maturity in John Bonham to not to feel like he don't have to be playing on everything. Yeah. You know, or it might have been he just needed a rest.
Yeah.
You know, so but you know what I'm saying? I mean, he didn't. Yeah. You have this fantastic drummer, but he's not playing on everything, or he's just playing like on some of the songs.
Gallows Pole, he was just going.
Yeah, just something real simple, you know. But that always shows a maturity in the musician that doesn't have to feel like he has to be playing on everything. Very good.
And then the next one is Gallows Pole, which is a modern rendition of a song called, like a traditional folk song called "The Maid Saved from the Gallows," I think, by Fred
Gerlach. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they took their own spin on that.
Yeah. One of the few that aren't one of the originals, right?
Yeah. And it was a folk song. And while we're at it, how would you define folk music? Because I know that's very misunderstood.
That's a very good question, because I think folk music it means something different to everybody. Everybody has their own preconceived idea of what folk music is. When I was young, you know, I mean, my idea was folk music was seeing Peter, Paul, and Mary sing "Where Have All the Flowers Gone," or kind of a hippie with everybody had flowers in their hair. But folk music is more the music of the local people, the local folks. And, you know, in England, that would be traditional fiddle tunes from England and Ireland. And in Louisiana, it would be, you know, Cajun music. Here in Houston, it would be blues or or Tex-Mex or whatever, you know.
Uh-huh.
So that's why when I say there's a lot of folk music, that was a lot of the acoustic players like Fred Gerlach
and another thing I was reading about the Bron-Ir Cottage was there was a pretty good local folk music scene where they would hear the music of the locals.
Yeah.
So that inspired a lot of Led Zeppelin 3.
Yeah. Matter of fact, we thought about calling this thing Led Zeppelin the folk band. But we thought the Shrieking Monkeys was a little more catchy.
Yeah.
You know.
Catch attention a little bit better.
Yeah.
Well, the next one is Tangerine, which I think both of us, that's our favorite song on the album.
Yeah, I think Tangerine, I remember whenever I was a kid listening to Tangerine, and I just thought there was so much to like about it. Starts off with a 12-string, which, you know, later on, Stairway to Heaven, we know, you know, but had
foreshadowing.
You had a nice, really pretty acoustic 12-string starting off slow. And something that's unique about this, he plays pedal steel guitar on it, you know. Yeah. Has kind of a very country twang to it, and you know, here's Led Zeppelin with a pedal steel guitar. You got to be kidding me! Back then, the rock bands didn't play pedal steel.
And it wasn't overly country, where it's like had kind of like a slurred voice, but like it just has the elements of the music without overbearing it. Which I feel like if a lot of people try and add country, they're like, if they're trying to add a little country with rock, it becomes a lot of country with a little rock. So
right, yeah, and pedal steel is not an easy instrument to play. No. It's got lead nevers, feet pedals, and all kinds of stuff. So I'm impressed that he did that. And then he has that cool lead solo toward the end where he has he has on the bass pickup, and it sounds real warm and just a great solo. And I remember when I was a kid, I tried to imitate that solo, and the song was not that hard. It was accessible, you know. So you can learn it because it's not that hard. But there's a lot of things to like about that song.
Yeah, I really like it.
Very good.
Maybe a cover soon.
Yeah, we need to do that one.
Yeah. So now That's the Way.
Another acoustic song. Huh? Yeah. That's the way. That's the way. And use another open G tuning, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What were you saying it was about? You're telling me earlier.
Yeah, that's the way. It's kind of a social statement. It's about the poor boy can't be with the girl anymore because she's a little rich girl and he's a little poor boy, and your mama don't want me to see her anymore. So it's kind of a social statement about different classes, you know.
Yeah.
So and beautiful open tuning.
Yeah. A lot of open tuning.
Something that Page would do is he would use like an open G tuning but he'd tune it all down a whole step where it was actually F, and
Yeah.
it took me years to figure out these tunings because he would kind of trick you, you know. I don't know if he did that intentionally or not, but he was very experimental with his tunings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because he could be. He's
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, that's Jimmy Page. Very
The
good.
next one is Bron Ir Stomp.
Ronnie R. Stomp. What can you tell me about that?
It was originally called Jennings Farm Blues. So, but they originally named it, Jennings Farm Blues, but then they changed it to Bron Ir Stomp because they wrote it in the Bron Ir College and.
And that's and then on the album. What does it say on the album cover in here? It says, did you read that on the album? Read that little thing right here. Little.
It says, credit must be given to Bron Ir, a small derelict, I can't say that, cottage in South Snowdonia for painting a somewhat forgotten picture of true completeness, which acted as an incentive to some of the musical statements.
So they thought enough about that little place that it really inspired them to write the album and everything.
Yeah.
And of course that's another open tuning with no, just one bass drum, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
No. John Bonham's just laying back doing his thing, and the song I didn't know for years until finally I found out. I always thought it was singing about a girl, typical love song,
Yeah.
but he was singing about his dog. Robert Plant would take a walk with his dog out in the countryside, and that song's about his dog. Okay.
So now the last song, Hats Off to Harper.
Hats off to Roy Harper. Well, that put Roy Harper on the map. That's all I can say about that.
And his first show was like a show with him, Jethro Tull, Pink Floyd, and
T-Rex, Tyrannosaurus Rex,
Yeah.
Roy Harper, and he was he kind of got around. He was an English folky acoustic music, and Led Zeppelin thought a lot of him. He was associated with Pink Floyd, and he was just and I think he's still alive. He's just a really well respected in the English folk music. Of course, naming a song after him didn't hurt his career any, did it? Yeah. But anyway, so that.
Especially Led Zeppelin giving their hats off to Roy Harper.
Yeah. Well, I guess what we're doing here is we're reviewing the albums, and I think what they usually do at the end of are we wrapping it up here? Or
Sure.
Are we missing it? I'll think of something we left out.
I was also going to say, how is it different? Like, just, I know we talked about it a little bit, but how is it different? Like,
You asking me?
yeah.
I think the main thing is that they showed that they weren't just a hard rocking electric guitar turned up to 10 band, and I think it was very brave of them that when the record companies wanted them to continue in that tradition because they made a lot of money. I mean, a lot of money, and that they said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to take a break, and we're going to do something different, and we're going to play some acoustic music, and we're going to show that we're not just a one-trick pony, and so forth. What are your thoughts on that?
I like it just because it's kind of a really, whenever I think of 70s, I think of Marshall turned up to 11, like just very hard rock, and it's kind of like nice relief, like how a band like that can do something like Tangerine where it's nice and pretty.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to ask you, you have a lot more experience with Led Zeppelin, like as listening, you've listened to them your whole life, or most of your life, you've seen them in concert. How does this album compare to the other albums?
That's a very good question. They got better and better. Of course, Led Zeppelin 4 was so iconic. With Stairway to Heaven,
Black Dog.
Black Dog. But you know what? Had Going to California, which was in the tradition of Led Zeppelin 3. Double drop D tuning, open T, and Battle of Evermore acoustic with mandolin. So they realized that they could still do that, and so they still had that. And
you could also tell that Page really likes this kind of stuff. Like a lot of these songs were on. Don't quote me on this, but the album was called, I think, Page and Plant's Unzipped or Unleaded.
Yeah.
Where it was just Page and Plant doing some acoustic stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when they did it in recent years, when they did all this acoustic stuff in their later years, I read that they brought back a lot of those tunes from Led Zeppelin 3.
Yeah.
They so obviously they thought a lot of them because they did them. But back to your question, Led Zeppelin in House of the Holy, the 5th album got even better. Had the Rain song, which was open tuning. I think Led Zeppelin House of the Holy had more electric. It had Over the Hills and Far Away. That's an acoustic one, and then. But I would say I would say 3, 4, and 5. All of those for me are 3, 4, and House of the Holy. All of those about equal in my mind. 1 and 2 are great, but I tend to like 3, 4, and Houses of the Holy.
And then last question, or I guess last 2 questions. If somebody asks you about Led Zeppelin 3, now after we've talked through all this and we've listened to all of it, how would you describe it to them?
How would I describe it?
Yeah.
I'd call it eclectic, and it's got some good rock on it, but it's also got a nice mixture of folk music.
Yeah. And then also, like, what's your final thoughts about this?
What's my final thoughts about it? I think that's when you get into the thumbs up or thumbs down. I think it's pretty obvious. So let me ask you: do you give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. So we both give it a double thumbs up, right?
I think something cool that we could do on here is, at the end, we can always give it a 1 out of 10 rating.
Okay. In
our personal opinion, this has nothing to do with the actual music itself, but you go first. So 1 out of 10. What do you?
1 out of 10. I'm gonna give it a 10 just because it's such an iconic album.
Yeah, I'll give it an 8.
Okay, very good. Yeah, very good. Okay.
I like it.
Yeah.
But it's not something I would exactly go back and listen to over and over again.
Right.
And it hit you at a different time.
And that 10 might be because when I was learning, when I was a kid, it was just so inspirational to me, and I was learning guitar, and it was all so exciting. I mean, I've heard a lot of music between now and then. At that time, I had not heard a lot of music, and
it
was a different perspective.
This album predates me by almost 40 years.
And then you've probably heard more music in your life than I had heard at the time.
Yeah.
A lot more, because
it's a lot more accessible.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
all right. Well,
thanks
we
for listening.
appreciate y'all hanging out with it. Are we finished here?
Yeah.
Asher Rives on my right. I'm Brian Turner. If you have any questions, you can contact. How do they contact us?
Yeah, on our comments.
On our comments on our YouTube channel and our podcast.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll release it for the first couple of episodes on both of our channels. And then we'll also try and release it on Apple Podcasts and like all the podcast platforms. And then eventually, once we get the word out about this, we'll create a separate channel for this.
Very good.
But thanks for watching.
Thanks a lot, and adios.
See you later.